Hi everyone, so in this video we are going to see how to configure RTDAS output driver on PlantConnect server for Oracle connectivity. So for this, let's quickly log in into our PlantConnect server with admin rights. I have the user named as admin with all the administrative rights for PlantConnect server. So I am using this user as an administrative right for logging into PlantConnect server. So this is the home page which you will be seeing once you have logged in with the valid credentials of the admin. In my case, I have configured a demo injection machine which is specially configured for sending data to the Oracle cloud. In your case, this machine can be any machine which gives you real-time data and you wish to send that real-time data to the Oracle IoT cloud. So let's begin with the configuration. So let's click on admin and then click on site admin tool. So this is the home page, or this is the page on which you can configure output drivers and all the other stuff. On the site admin tool page, you have a left panel where you can have multiple options like plant, device, variable, CBP, output driver, template, and etc. So as we are going to configure output driver for sending data to the Oracle cloud, we'll select output driver and then select output driver configuration. With this, we can see an output driver configuration page where generally we do all the configuration of output drivers which are used to send data to any third-party server. So for the configuration of Oracle output driver, we have to select RTDAS, and once you select RTDAS, in the export to option you will have the list of all the output drivers which are installed for the RTDAS. So in this case we are going to use Oracle RTDAS. Once you have selected Oracle RTDAS, in the export to option drop down list, you need to configure a config name for the device for which you have to configure output driver, which is Oracle. This config name is functionality which is used in case where you have to configure a single output driver for a single device with multiple instances. Multiple instances in the sense the one instance will be configured for sending sensor data and the other instance will be configured for sending OE related data. So first of all, let's create the config name for the sensor data. So I'll name it as sensor data itself, or the sensor. Once you have written the config name, you need to select debug mode, add 0 or 2 for the debug mode. 0 and 2 basically shows us that if we have to apply the debug mode, we have to give it as 2, and if we do not have to apply the debug mode, then we have to enter the value as 0. So in our case, let's have the debug mode on. So I'll configure the debug mode value as 2 and push this key value in the right panel. Then in the device list, you can select the device for which you have to configure the output driver. In our case, the device name is demo injection machine. So we'll click on the demo injection machine. So this is what the device level configurations are. So let us quickly add the site URL. This site URL basically includes the connector URL. So then the upload frequency is kept 60,000 as a standard measure. You can keep it as, if you have to configure for 2 minutes, then you can keep the value as 120000 in milliseconds. So then in our case we have kept it as 1 minute, so the upload frequency is 60,000 milliseconds. Once you have configured upload frequency, then you need to configure a token. In the token box, you need to configure a value token which you have to use while sending data to the Oracle cloud. In my case, I have the token as this. Okay, so then we have to configure a data type. For sensor data, the data type should be kept as 1. Then if you have to configure for sensor data, you need to add the hardware ID as well, and along with hardware ID you need to configure the type also. So let me quickly add those hardware ID, and the type is sensor. Once you have configured the type, you need not configure the below details, as these details are mandatory in case of OE data. So the last field we have to configure is parameters metadata. In this parameters metadata, we have to configure the names of the variables which we wish to send data to the Oracle cloud. In my case, the parameters are pressure and temperature. So after this, I will save the configuration, and you will have a configured devices entry as well. So after this, click on save to save the sensor data configuration. Once the sensor data configuration is done, you can simply click on add button in front of config name and add OE to add the details of OE related configuration. Once you configure config name OE, you can configure a debug mode, then select the device in the device list as demo injection machine and enter the site URL. The site URL for the OE connector is the URL for the OE connector which we have configured on the production monitoring app. So configure the upload frequency as 60,000, enter the token for the OE and sensor data are the same. Now in the data type, you need to configure 2, as you have to send the OE related data in the JSON request created by this instance. So once you configure data type as 2, you can skip the below 2 entries which are generally used for the sensor data. Those are hardware ID and type. So now you need to configure the product ID for the OE related data. So I'll configure the product ID as demo product. Then I need to configure the machine ID The product ID and the machine ID are the mandatory fields for sending the OE related data. Then the factory ID, production line ID, routing task are the optional fields. In my case, I would also like to configure the routing task ID. So the routing task ID is demo task. So after this, you can add the operation number and the resource number as null. In the parameter metadata, you need to configure the two variables which are compulsory needed for the OE calculation on the production monitoring app. So those variables are quantity and bad quantity. So the quantity and bad quantity parameters are added. Okay, once these parameters are added, you can click on save to save this configuration, and then you will have an entry in the configured devices as well. Then click on save button. So in this way we have also saved the configuration for OE related data. So in this way we can configure for both sensor data and OE data on the output driver configuration page. Once you have configured any output driver, you need to download this output driver and use it in the RTDAS directory. So for this you can simply click on home button, and then you will be directed back to the site admin tool page. So for downloading the output driver configuration file, you need to select the output driver in the left panel and then click on download RTDAS driver file. On this page you need to select the plant and site which have your device configured. So in my case the plant is Oracle plant demo and the site is Oracle demo site. So I'll just click on download button and this will start the downloading of output driver configuration.ini file. So in this way you can see output driver configuration.ini file is downloaded. And now if you open this file, you will get to know that whatever configurations you have done on the output driver configuration page are all saved in this file. You need to use this file in the RTDAS directory so that the RTDAS comes to know the output driver which it has to use for sending data to the Oracle cloud. So with this we have seen how to configure an RTDAS output driver for sending data to the Oracle IoT Cloud Server. Thank you.